Well, councillors and executive management team, welcome to the Planning and Environment Development Committee meeting for the 2nd of November. And I call the meeting open and call those who are present an apology. So we have an apology and a leave of absence from Councillor Chaffey and also Councillor Luke. And I believe we have got Councillor Hoddle attending online as the floodwaters are precluding him from being able to attend in person. So Councillor Hoddle, can you hear us?
Yes, I can, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next item that we have on the agenda is declaration of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? A second time, any declarations of interest, and for the third time, no declarations of interest. So we move on to the third item of the agenda, and that's a report of the Director of Planning and Environment Services, item 3.1. I have a presentation to this one from Owen Jones, and it's in relationship to amended report development application number 3022/019, construction of a double-storey dwelling house and front boundary fence, lot 59 DP 514051, 8 Grays Place, Gunnedah. And I'd like to invite Owen Jones, who is going to make a representation on behalf of this part of the agenda. And we'll hand over to you, Mr. Jones. We've 5 minutes, which I'm sure is enough time for you. And at the end of that time, councillors may wish to ask you some questions. So over to you.
Yes, my presentation is regarding our house in 5 Grays Place and the proposed height, or the height and placement of the proposed residence in the adjoining block, which is 8 Grays Place. It's just on the eastern side of our house, and has come before the meeting before, and apparently was rejected on that occasion, and has come a new proposal has come on before the council again, and it has been that the current proposal has moved the residents forward on the block and much closer to our own, and in doing that, it's restricted our view, which is a magnificent view of the whole valley, right out from towards Narrabri around as far as Carroll Gap. With the house being so tall and overall, it will, from ground level up, be somewhere around 7 metres above our roof line, and being so close to the front of our house will block most of our view over that entire area. It will also have a restricting view on or from the reserve at the back of our house, and also from a barbecue site and table that was put there by council in the past. The overall height of the house will restrict anyone from seeing over the top from either that public facility or will actually spoil the view from ours, whether be from ground level or from a second high terrace, if you will, at the back of our house, that gives us an unrestricted view of the entire valley. And I think that the proposal as it stands there now belongs to Europe rather than to Australia. a different design to the average Australian house.
Agreed.
That in itself is the proponent's personal choice, I guess, but it sort of makes the whole area look or it's out of keeping with the whole area. And yeah, the value of our place, I don't know what the dollar loss is by losing that view is, but I would imagine that it's considerable. And we had when we bought the place, about 7 years ago now, I think, we had a house inspection and all the rest. Chap came from Tamworth to do that inspection, and he asked how much we paid for it. And I told him, and he said, "But that isn't the value of the view." He said, and I quite believe him, because it is a nice uninterrupted view, and it's tucked away up there in the quiet end of the town against the reserve. And so we have the benefit of sort of half being out in the scrub and half being overlooking the town and the entire valley. And actually, that's about all I've got to say about it. Really, it's just bloody annoying to be in a position of losing that well, just a quiet spot for the rest of our days, because we're both getting on a bit. That's intended as a retirement thing, and it's going to be interrupted by someone else's choice of houses, really. And I think that if the level of the house was brought down to a single story, at least on our or on the western side of his block, would give us an overview over the top from our back barbecue area and so on, that's at a level that lets us see over the top of both houses at that point. His proposal is for another layer on top of well, actually it's about getting on for a 3-story house. And I have here a plan from the surveyors.
Mr. Johns, I think you've just about run out of time. It's amazing how 5 minutes passes.
Would you give me a short time?
Do we have a seconder for that, please? Seconded. Those in favour? Against? Call the motion carried. You have extension of time, sir.
I could pass around this site plan and the residence that's to go on it. Might sort of make me a bit clearer. It's the western elevation of the proposal that is closest to our house and is only, according to the site plan, 802 millimetres away from our own. And anyway, if I could pass this around.
Mr. Chair, may we have the figure 1 up? That might be something that would be of use to Mr. Jones. I think it's next one down. Keep going down. Might not be figure 2, beg your pardon. So is that what you're intending to point out to us? It might be easy to work.
You mind if I come down there closer to you? I'm very deaf and that.
Excuse me for a minute, Mr. Chair, if it would help, I'm not sure if Paige is able to bring up a 6 maps of the site. I've got one in front of me, but I can see what Mr. Jones is talking about, the back scrub block. So that's actually your parcel of land
That's right.
there, and that's the scrub block, the scrub part of your lot behind that you're talking about that has the
Yes,
barbecue in it. Is
it's-
that right?
Well, no, not between the house and the scrub wall, there's a retaining wall.
Okay.
And from that, there's houses, there's stairs going up onto it. And we have a barbecue area and so
Mm.
on the back of it, that allows us to look straight out over the top of our existing house. And it's uninterrupted from, well, it's looking back towards Narra, right?
Just a point of order, Councillor MacArthur. I'm afraid Councillor Hoddle cannot hear while you're away from the microphone. So in fairness to him, you need to be back at the microphone.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Deputy Mayor, could I ask a question of Mr. Johns, please?
Mr. Johns?
Yes. Mr. Johns, I understand your concern about a view, but it seems that the view from the front balcony that you have will not be interrupted by this building. The view that you're possibly going to lose is the one from your back block, a barbecue block at the back of the house. Is that correct?
Yes, the barbecue block is at the back of the house.
We see one be able to hear you.
The view from the back of the house is the one that will be interrupted the most. That portion there in that photo will be what we will lose from the barbecue area. And for anything further back on the block, our block runs up into the reserve, the scrub country of the reserve. And it also, there's a barbecue up there that I believe Hansel Geyer had put in place a good many years ago now, but it's about 50 or 60 metres behind our house in the reserve. And the height of that new building will be such that it will be blocked off the view. That same view will be blocked off by that house. And I think by having a lower plan, perhaps single story on our end and 2-story on the eastern end, which is towards Finney's or Bob Finney's, that would leave it uninterrupted, and everyone could share the view instead of denying us and what we've got. And we appreciate that view, and it is worth quite a lot to the value of our place.
Thank you. Councillors, do we have any other questions to Mr. Johns? Councillor,
I do, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to confirm, Mr. Johns, that your concern is solely around the views to the east.
I'm sorry. Anyway.
I certainly hope that's not the case, but so you have views to the north and to the west. It's purely the view to the east that's of concern to you.
Yes,
Mr. Johns.
considerable now.
Just you might want to speak.
There is a considerable amount of that view that will be cut out.
To the east?
Well, to the east and around to the valley that runs up towards Manila, that we will lose that. And the only place that we will be able to see that full view is if we're sitting out in the front yard all day. And also the shadow lines that are on this proposal, I don't believe are anywhere near it. They're at 9 o'clock in the morning on the 22nd of June. And that's when the sun was at its very lowest. But what about the time between 6 o'clock and 9 o'clock? The entire blooming area is going to be in the shadow of that house if it's that high. And summertime, when the sun moves a bit further around to the east, then it will improve. But so will the length of the day that you're missing until you move out of the shadow. And just little things that I know we have them there now, and we don't want to lose them. And because, as I said before, it's our retirement scheme. It's our superannuation.
Councillor MacArthur, are you happy with the answer to the
John.
questions? Does that answer your question?
It does.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any other councillor wishes to ask a question of Mr. Johns? Councillor Hoddle? Then thank you very much for your presentation.
Sorry, I know I'm late.
You've got
Is it too
something,
late?
Councillor McGrath?
I know you mentioned single story, but I'm curious as to what you would find an acceptable compromise to be. I'm sorry. Murray, can you ask my question for me?
Well, if the house or the plan of the house, well, it could be reduced for about a third of the length. Then, ours from the barbecue area anyway, would be restored. But whether or, I mean, this fella's, he wants what he thinks is the best house in the world. I don't think it belongs in Australia. I think it belongs in Europe. Something of the lines of just a straight roof, more like the one that we already have, a flat roof or a slightly elevated roof, without being a full gable pitch, would reduce the height considerably.
Mr. Johns, I think we get the idea. We can't do a planning redevelopment here in this particular meeting. That's yet to be considered. So I think your question, you've answered the question adequately at this point. So is there any other further questions? And Councillor McGrath, are you satisfied at this point with the answer you received?
I am. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions to Mr. Johns? Then once again, thank you very much for your presentation. I know you were struggling because of your hearing, but thank you very, very much. Before we move on, I do apologise, Councillor. We've got a little bit of housekeeping. I forgot to ask for a mover and a seconder for the absentees. Moved by Councillor Fuller and seconded by Councillor Moses. All those in favour? Against? I call the motion carried. I do apologise for that, councillors. Can we move on to the Director of Planning and Environment's recommendations to item 3.1. I'd like to hand over to Mr. Johns to outline the recommendations.
Thanks, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Hand it over to the other Mr. Johns in the room. Councillors, you will recall this application from back in July of this year. An application, well, a recommendation of refusal was put by staff and councillors voted to defer their decision such that a redevelopment or sorry, a redesign of the development could take place to mitigate some of the staff's concerns. That has now taken place. And what you have before you is another design that council staff are prepared to approve, subject to conditions as they're outlined in the report. They are still seeking departures from standards, but from a staff perspective, it is a much better outcome than the initial design. I do note the Johns's submission in relation to this. It has been addressed in the report. I guess what I'd say in relation to views is that there is no exclusive right to a view. I don't doubt that there will be some impingement of that view from 5 Grays Place, but I don't believe it would be a catastrophic impingement of that view. And I believe that there will still be a very good view from the front of that property and parts of the backyard. It's generally not, from my experience, considered whether there's a view from a backyard has been lost as from a planning perspective. I have got Mr. Hudson in the room who's authored both of those reports. We'd both be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Johns. Do we have any questions?
Just one question. Under the planning laws, it still applies once an approval is given on this case, on this one, that if we go against it, they can lodge against that as well. Can you please? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Full, and through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Yes, I think I understand the question. If we refuse this application, could they take us to court? Yes.
Then do I have a councillor who wishes to move the recommendation?
So I just have another
Yes,
question, Mr.
Oh,
I would like someone to move the motion.
I'll move it. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Chair. And I will speak to it when you require it to be spoken to. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Hoddle. Do I have a seconder then, please? Seconder to the motion. Thank you, councillor O'Keefe. Then if you'd like to move your motion, then I'll go on to questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As councillors, we're here not to stop development, but we're to encourage sensible development. And as councillors, we've given this site a lot of time. I think we've all visited the site, and there were numerous issues with the distance from the curb to the building. We required the owner to go back at considerable expense and rework his plans with an engineer. It's a very difficult site. He's done that. He's come forward with another drawing and another proposition that takes the building back so that the neighbour, Mr. Johns, does not have the building in front of his balcony. As I think our Mr. Andrew Johns said from council, you don't own a view, unfortunately. For most people, they wish they did, but I think it's generally considered that you can't own a view. It's something that's there. But I do sympathise for Mr. Johns in his retirement next door. But honestly, to me, that the design of the house is very pleasant. We all have different tastes, and I think a 2-storey house on that difficult site will fit in really quite well. It is a very difficult site, and I think the problem that we face as councillors also is if this development lapses, it'll continue to be something that's an ugly thing at the end of the street where no one's going to take it on. It's an expensive site to develop. I think he's done a reasonable job in reworking it. I congratulate our planning department for being so patient over this and going back over a long process and coming up with a recommendation. And I'm very pleased to see the thing go ahead and recommend it. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Hoddle. Then councillor MacArthur, you have a question? No question. Do I have another councillor who wishes to ask a question or speak against the motion? Councillor McGrath.
This is maybe just a question to ease my own conscience, but we obviously requested when we declined the previous application that everything be moved back a little bit because it was too close to the street. Have we then inadvertently asked that the applicant obstruct the view by everything being pushed back a little?
I can take that question for you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. My answer to that would be that the view would be less restricted by the second proposal because moving it back rather than moving it forward. Had it been moved forward, then yes, I would agree with what you're implying. Yes.
Thank you. That I just
Thank
didn't
you,
want to
Mr.
think it was our
Johns.
fault.
Councillor O'Keefe, as the second of the motion, you wish to speak?
Very briefly to back up Councillor Hoddle and just say, I have utmost sympathy for the point of the Johns's residents, not Johns's staff member in the room today. But unfortunately, it's not grounds for refusal of the development application. And as unfortunately this council has learned that even if we don't wish to proceed with something, we may suffer a very expensive loss and likely would suffer a very expensive loss in the Land and Environment Court. And also crucially, I echo Councillor Hoddle's point that If we don't reach this compromise and proceed with developing this site, it will remain undeveloped and an eyesore in our town for some time. So, it is the best solution or compromise we've been able to come up with, and I'm pleased to see it progressing.
Thank you very much. So we don't have a speaker against the motion. So I think that ends the debate. So I'll now put the motion. All those in favour? A show of hands. I call that unanimous. Thank you very much. So we move on to the next item in the agenda, which is item 3.2, development application number 2022/179, construction of outbuilding shed, lot 15, section 56, DP 758492, 10 Johnson Street, Gunnedah. And I'd like to hand back to Mr. Johns to outline his recommendation.
Thanks, Mr. Deputy Mayor, and through you, as you pointed out, this DA relates to a proposed outbuilding or shed at 10 Johnson Street in Gunnedah. The applicant seeks a variation to the cumulative area of outbuildings standard. They seek to exceed that rather by 12 square metres. The variation supported in this instance.
Do I have a, thank you, Councillor Fuller has moved the motion, seconded by Councillor Moses. Councillor Fuller, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's all there in black and white. We can't go against what's there. So
Do
thank
I
you.
have a councillor who wishes to ask a question or speak against the motion? Councillor Moses, a second to the motion, do you wish to speak?
No, thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Then I shall put the motion. All those in favour by show of hands? Against, I call the motion unanimously carried. Moving right along to item 3.3, development application number 2022/181, construction of an outbuilding shed, lot 4, section 4, DP 758723, 23 Nombi Street, Malali. And I hand back to Mr. Johns to outline his recommendation.
Thanks, Mr. Deputy Mayor, and through you, once again, councillors, this DA relates to an outbuilding, this time at Malali, 23 Nombi Street. The applicant seeks a variation to 3 numerical development control standards or guidelines contained in the DCP, as they're outlined in the report. Again, council staff support the departures in this particular instance.
Thank you, Mr. Johns. Do I have a mover of the motion, please? Thank you, Councillor McGrath, and a seconder, Councillor Fuller. Councillor McGrath, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, thank you.
Councillor Fuller is the seconder.
Mr.
You're quite happy? Nobody wishes to speak against the motion, then I will put the motion. All those in favour? Against, I call the motion carried. That being the last item on the agenda for our planning and development meeting for November 22, I call the meeting closed at 4:32 p.m. Thank you very much for your attendances. And Mr. Johns, I'm sorry that you didn't win the day, but thank you very, very much for your presentation. And I hope things have turned out better than you envisage.